In a letter he wrote in 1789, Benjamin Franklin famously penned that in this world nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. And we still relate to that saying all these years later. If you are like me, you accept that taxes are a part of life. Now, I don't always agree with how the government spends my tax dollars, but I accept that I need to pay what is due in taxes and that it's intended for the common good of our society. Now, because I recognize that, personally, I can't afford my own hospital. I can't afford my own medical team. I can't afford to build roads. I can't even manufacture chainsaws on my own, right? All the very important, these big chunks of life, right? But, together we pay taxes, and so we accept the fact that we pay what we owe. But I don't want to pay any more than I have to, right? I've never met anyone who's voluntarily saying, put me in a higher tax bracket so I can pay more taxes, right? This idea that paying what we owe relates to our gospel today. There were taxes in Jesus' day, and the Pharisees plot to trap Jesus by getting him to publicly answer their question about taxes. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Now, Jesus amazingly avoids their trap by getting them to pull out a coin that is used for the tax, which has Caesar's image and title on it. And Jesus says to them, "Give therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." And Jesus goes on to say, "Give to God the things that are God's." What are the things that belong to God? Well, the short answer is everything. Everything belongs to God. We belong to God. Just as the coins bear Caesar's image and belong to him, us too, the Bible tells us that we were made in the image of God, and therefore we too belong to God. Everything we have, everything that we are, is gift from God's generosity. And we are simply stewards of these gifts. We're beginning a 5-week preaching series entitled Stewardship, What Belongs to God? And today we're considering it as a question. What belongs to God? We want to explore what it means to us that everything belongs to God and that we are stewards of all God's gifts. Catholic author Matthew Kelly defines stewardship as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. As disciples, we recognize that God has entrusted us with this responsibility of stewarding all his gifts to us. As disciples, you and I acknowledge that we are passing through this life, and so that all we are and all that we have is on loan to us from God, because everything belongs to God. Nothing we have originates from us. God alone is creator. He created the universe out of nothing. Sometimes we say something like, Mom's amazing. She created that meal out of nothing, right? And not to take away from how impressive Mom's care is for us, it's not true, right? We don't create out of nothing. We always have something to start with when we create. Only God creates out of nothing. Therefore, everything that's made belongs to him. The Bible speaks of this in a variety of ways. Take, for example, Psalm 24, the first verse. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. And St. Paul, writing to the Corinthians, what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as if it were not a gift? So sacred scripture teaches that everything belongs to God, that God is the ultimate gift giver. He is never outdone in generosity. As I said, he gave us his image, right? He endowed us with free will, the capacity to love and to be loved. And even when we messed up this great gift, God gave even more. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. God gives himself to us completely in Jesus. Jesus is God's love outpoured. It is his ultimate generosity. And obviously, we want to be continually grateful for this great gift of Jesus in our lives, but also for all the other gifts that we have received from God. And because we bear the image of God, we want to be generous as he is generous. As stewards, we are called to use our blessings generously towards God and neighbor in every area of our lives. You know, some of us naturally tend to seeing the glass half empty, and some of us naturally tend to see the glass half full. But regardless of our natural tendency, we need to recognize our blessings. We need to count our blessings because this helps us in our discipleship. When we see the blessings that God has given us and the ways God has cared for us personally, this propels us, this leads us to joy and gratitude. And secondly, as disciples, we count who count our blessings, our gratitude inspires our generosity, which leads to greater happiness in our lives. Stewardship helps us to grow in gratitude and generosity in very tangible ways through something we call the 3 T's. The 3 T's of stewardship: time, talent, treasure. The 3 T's. Treasure is the most obvious area of the 3 T's. It is simply about how we generously spend our money in charitable giving and through almsgiving. Talent is about how we serve God and others through our using our gifts and skills and talents generously. As stewards, we want to use these for the benefit of others. Time is the most difficult area to steward. It is the area that is most out of our control. Sometimes time seems to move too quickly or too slowly, but it's actually always moving at the same rate. But we do control how we prioritize our time. We can choose how we will use our time generously or not. Being good stewards of our time involves giving time back to God in prayer, thanking him, adoring him, expressing our love for him, listening to him, spending time with him. As disciples, we are called to be good stewards of the 3 T's of time, talent, and treasure. We are called to give to God what belongs to God. But how do we gauge our stewardship? Like, how do we honestly assess, how am I doing in this area of stewardship? A mark of generous stewardship is when we no longer want to say, well, how much do I need to give to God and others? But a generous stewardship approach is, how much do I need to keep to myself so that I can be more generous towards others? Right? I think this really nails it, right? How much do I need to keep for me? Right? Not how much do I need to give to others. So because as stewards, we want to be generous. Just so opposite to our approach to paying taxes, where we don't want to pay a penny more. No, in stewardship, we want to be generous, over the top generous. If stewardship of time, talent, and treasure is something new to you, I encourage you to begin by reflecting on this fact that everything belongs to God. Everything you have is gift. Everything is on loan from God. So how does that affect your life? And if stewardship is familiar to you, ask yourself how you're doing in this area of gratitude and counting your blessings and generosity. And also, where are you called in this season of your life to possibly be more generous with your time, talent, and treasure? And if you have been embracing stewardship for a long time, reflect on that mark of generosity that asks, how much do I need to keep for me in order to be even more generous to others? In the weeks to come, we'll reflect more on stewardship and how we practice it as disciples. But for today, our focus has been on that key question that is the foundation of stewardship. What belongs to God? Everything belongs to God. And as disciples, we want to be good stewards and generously give to God what belongs to God.